By the end of this video, you will have an understanding of how to do a simple 2D level design for your games using Unity. For the best tips and tricks on game programming and game development, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post a video every Monday. If you are already a subscriber, thank you. Your support means the world to us. My name is George Wulfers and I'm a professional game developer. Let me guide you on your game development journey. Be sure to watch this video to the end to find out how you can get more free learning resources. Step number 1. Layers in 2D games. So what are layers in 2D games? We went over this a little bit in the previous video, but let's go ahead and expand on it. So layers in 2D games allow us to have objects separated into sections. This is not only for the level, but for the items, the players, the projectiles, and pretty much all of the objects that make up that level. The layers are usually correlated to the Z value or the depth value for an object based on the camera's position. Although these types of games don't have actual depth, using layers will allow us to fake this to add a sense of depth into our games. Normally, the farther an object is, the smaller it gets, the slower it moves relative to the camera, and the more it blends with the atmosphere of the environment. The opposite is true when an object is closer and it is much bigger. It moves a lot faster relative to the camera, and the less it blends with the atmosphere of the environment. We can fake this using layers. Make sure to watch to the end to find out how you can do this in your games using Unity. Step number 2, the background.
Okay, so let's open up Unity and let's go into the scenes folder and let's create a folder called, let's call it area 01, and it's going to create a scene and call it test level 01. So this level is just going to be the one that we created, the demo one. It's not going to be for the actual game. It's just for us to test any functionality. Kind of like a showcase, maybe? I don't know. But let's go ahead and open the test level 01 for our actual level. And it's not going to be we're not gonna make a huge level. It's just gonna be a decent size, smaller level, I guess. So we are going to be creating the background, and we aren't going to spend too much time on the background, mostly because I would want to make the background parallax, meaning having multiple layers for the background, so that you have different mountains moving at different speeds and whatnot in the background, or trees, or whatever you want to use. But I couldn't find anything that I liked, so we cannot do that. At this time, unfortunately. So I'm just going to be using for this one, this guy, like last time. But if you know, or if you personally are an artist and you can make a background that fits with our current assets, send me a message and let me know if you would like to make some art for us. But anyway, we're gonna make it tiled, and we're pretty much just gonna do what we did last time for this one, to be honest. So if we had, let's see, the background for okay, so the sorting layer, because we don't have anything, make it -1, just because that's just the background. That's what it's going to be. And I'm going to make sure that this one is at -1 as well, just so that we can visually see the different layers when we want to, do this and look at it like that. Um, so you can get a better feel, I guess, for it. But let's call this one background, and and then we could also do background here, but we don't have so. And we're just going to name this guy background as well. Since we are not going to be doing parallaxing with this one, we can just do that, parent it to the camera, and actually make sure that it is -1 here. Actually, no, it's not going to work like that. So make it 1. So we're just going to keep it like that. We're going to parent it to the camera so that it can just move with the camera. And if it was parallax, we wouldn't do this at all. We would actually have a script or a system that would have the different layers, and it would scale them properly based on the distance that you set them to be. And then based on the camera's position, we'll put them near that one, but and you would, based on the camera's movement, you would make sure that they moved at a fraction of whatever the camera is moving. It's we'll get into it once we have those assets. I'll keep looking for them, so we can actually get into more detail about that. But that's essentially how it works.
Step number 3, the foreground layer.
All right, so now we are going to be working on the far background. So let's create a sprite here, and I don't know what we're going to name it yet. Let's make sure that it is here, and this one we'll say 0 because the other one was -1. I'm going to call it far, oh, not background, foreground, because this is for the ground. Foreground. So essentially for the ground, we're going to have 3 different layers, and you'll see why in a second once we build the whole thing. But yeah. So we are going to get this guy for fun for now, and are going to tint this guy. Not too much, just half of that. And let me see. So, okay, let's back to the background. I think. Oh, because we never did this stuff. So we're just gonna move this guy to its proper sorting layer. And we're just gonna darken it so that you can see the effect once we work on it more. Let's make it a tiled. Let's do 5 and we can actually make these into prefabs if we wanted to. So this would be its own thing. Maybe we can actually make one of these and call it bar ground objects. We could actually have, I don't know, some other objects, a background as well. But let's add another one, I guess. Let's and well, these don't need to be tiled.
Let me know in the comments below if this is making any sense or if there's anything you are struggling with. Step number 4, the mid-ground layer.
Alright, for the mid-ground, let's go ahead and That can be our mid-ground. Let's create an empty object there, and let's call it mid-ground objects. Put everything in there.
Step number 5, the near ground layer.
Okay, so now we have the near ground layer. And this again. And let's put it at 0, 0 for now. This one's going to be brighter, so we're just leaving it at, wait, hold on, let me see these. Let's change this color to be 0.75. So they're not as dark, but they're a little bit lighter, and then this one's going to be fully white, so that you can see the differences between them. And then let's create another empty object and just create a near round objects in there.
Do you want to get tailored lessons just for you? Are you struggling or wondering if you are doing things right? If you would like to accelerate your learning while getting coached and guided by me, then this is right for you. For a limited time offer while supplies last, when you book me for 3 months, you can get it all for only $240 a month. That is $60 for a 1-hour session. This offer is only for a limited time for the first 10 people who contact me. So act now. Step number 6, the players.
Okay, so now the last thing we need is to place the players. And let's actually go back to see how we had players set up and the enemies. So let's go to scenes, demo, and we had player here. So let's create that into a home, and let's also create, well, let's create this guy like that as well, and the basic enemy, and a stalker. That way, we don't have to set up everything again. We can just drag and drop them into our scenes. So, if we want the player, drag it out there. Now, we don't see it, but it's there. Put him 0, 0. The reason we don't see him is because of the order in layers. Now, all of the enemies and all of the players and all of the items should probably be on the same layer, so we can add let's call it players, and let's have everything in there that is related to the players and probably enemies. So this one we want it to actually be, say, in front of the mid ground, behind the near ground, and in front of the far ground. Okay. So let's go ahead and set that up first. So now you can see this guy, that it's in front of everything.
Step number 7. Let's test it.
If we play it, probably won't see anything. Well, we'll fall through everything because nothing has collision yet. The only thing that really matters for collision is the midground, which are these objects here. So let's do that. So it's these objects here. But so these are created in sections, right? So if we wanted to create another section for the midground, we just copy this one and we just move it this way. Let's say 13. I don't know where it was. 3. So 0 now. And um, and the reason why you don't want to have each object with um, its own collision is because, well, let's try that, right? So we'll set this guy to have its own box collider 2D, and so that's 10, so it's midground. There it is. So it's going to be 5 and 0.5, and then 10 and 1. And then this one is going to be good where it is. And this one, good where it is. So let's test it now. So now we have collision, but as you can see, it goes through like that once it passes these, like this, once it goes from this collider to this collider, everything breaks. So how can you fix that? The answer is pretty simple. Let's remove that. Remove those. So we can have the actual collisions. Let's tag this guy now to ground. And let's add box collider there. And now when we play it, we shouldn't have that issue anymore. And there we go. Now you see that we have depth, but this is essentially how it would be if you visualized it. You have the player right there with the ground or the layer that it's in, and when the player moves, you know, where this box is, you can see that it um, it's behind it now. Same thing with this object, and with the background objects, it's in front of those objects. So you can kind of see, it kind of gives it a 3D effect in a way, where you can go in front and behind objects. So this is the how you would create your levels in 2D. And if you wanted to be able to jump and go into the back layer for the player, you could, in game, once you detect that you're close enough to maybe a collider up there, could switch your player to be on that layer. And now the player layer would be that layer up there, but that's a little bit more complicated to do. Not too much, but that's another effect you could have when you're creating your games. You could have multi-layers where you can interact with those layers. Those layers would have their own collisions, like we just saw, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, there is another layer that we could have, and that's a foreground layer. And what this foreground layer would do is it would have really close-up objects that are close to the camera, kind of like if you're hiding behind the bushes and you're just, staring into the player. And another a game that does that is, guessed it, we talked about this game last time, and yes, Ori, I believe it does that, where it has objects that are closer to the camera at some points, where it just kind of looks cool, like these objects right here. Um, those dark objects around the frame of the camera, those would be considered, you know, that foreground layer. So you can do a lot of cool effects with these things. So, so now if you wanted to add the enemy, let's just get a basic enemy out there. Would pretty much put them where the player is. So we'll just have them there, and we'll just have them here. I'm not gonna make them move or anything like that, but now you can interact with this guy as you would normally, and then you kill him. And items and anything else, you would do the same there. And you can place your items in the near ground, in the foreground, in the background, or whatever you want, based on the effects that you want the player to have. So if you wanted to, we could build up like a little, in the near ground, we could build up, something with these type of objects, maybe like he's walking into a cave and you want him to be, in front and behind of certain objects that looks like he's walking into a cave. You could do that with layers.
Congratulations! Now you know how to make a simple level design for your games. If you like to follow along, I have provided a link to our project in the description below. We have recently launched our private Facebook group. Join now to be part of our community. If you enjoyed this video and if it provided value to you, hit that like button. It really helps us with the algorithm so more people can watch it. Check out these other videos next on how to make 2D games using Unity. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, it's free. And don't forget to share it with your friends or with someone who will benefit from it. As always, thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you next week.